This case I'm about to tell you today is considered one of the most shocking cases in the recent history of the Amish community in the United States. The Amish reject modern technology, abhor violence, and live a way of life that would be nearly impossible for most of us. Their communities, spread across several states in the United States and a few other countries, are considered very safe places to live. However, on June 21, 2020, an 18-year-old Amish woman named Linda Stoltzfoos disappeared while walking home from church in the largest Amish community in the world. For months, local, state, and federal agencies worked tirelessly on the case.
For the past 6 months, these individuals and their respective agencies have devoted their time and expertise, as well as significant resources, to investigating what happened to Linda Stoltzfoos, who was kidnapped 6 months ago while walking home from church.
The details of what happened to her revealed that, although Amish communities are considered very safe, they are also highly vulnerable. Let's start with her personal life. Linda Stoltzfoos was 18 years old at the time of the events and lived in Bird in Hand, an unincorporated community in central Lancaster County in the state of Pennsylvania. Bird in Hand is considered a small and peaceful place where the majority of the population is Amish. Now everyone, in order to better understand this story, I need to provide some background about the Amish. For those who don't know, the Amish are a traditional Anabaptist Christian group that originated in Switzerland and Alsace in the 17th century and later migrated to North America in search of religious freedom. One of their beliefs is that only those who make a conscious decision to accept God can be baptized. They believe that only adults should be baptized because an adult is already aware of their choices and can decide whether or not to accept God. They oppose infant baptism, and because of this, they were persecuted in Europe by both Catholics and Protestants. They are also known for being radical pacifists. They were strictly opposed to violence and refused to take up arms, which was seen as a threat to the political and military order of the rulers of that time. Because of these beliefs and others as well, they were heavily persecuted. Many of them were imprisoned and many lost their lives. So they decided to migrate to North America in search of refuge and freedom. Today, most Amish communities reject the use of modern technologies such as public grid electricity, cars, television, and the internet. They live primarily through agriculture, wear simple and modest clothing, and use horses and buggies as their means of transportation. Today, the largest and oldest Amish community in the world is located in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which is exactly where Linda lived with her family. Linda was the oldest of 8 siblings. She was described as a shy and kind young woman by those who knew her. When she wasn't with her family or at church, she spent her time providing private lessons to Amish children with special needs. On June 21, 2020, a Sunday and Father's Day in the United States, Linda went to church at around 9:30 in the morning. The distance from her home to the church was about 1 mile. Linda walked to church where she spent several hours attending a service that was held on the farm of a member of the congregation. She was supposed to return home around 12:30 p.m., where she would change clothes, pick up a dessert she had prepared for her youth group, and then attend a meeting with that same group, which was scheduled to last from 2 p.m. until 11 p.m. However, Linda did not return home after leaving church around noon. In the early hours of Monday, June 22nd, Linda's parents, Lloyd and Susie Stoltzfoos, went to her room to check on her. However, they found the room empty. Since Linda never returned home after leaving church around noon, she never changed clothes as she was supposed to. Because of that, her parents noticed that the clothes she had worn to church were not there, which meant that she had never come home for lunch. Lloyd and Susie became extremely worried. They knew that something was terribly wrong. Although the Amish generally do not use electricity, they do have landline telephones for emergencies. Lloyd and Susie then called the police to report their daughter's disappearance. East Lampeter Township Police arrived at the Stoltzfoos home at 2:23 a.m. on June 22nd to gather information and begin the investigation and search for Linda. This caught the attention of all of the family's neighbors and later the entire Amish community. Early that morning, the search for Linda began immediately. All police departments from Bird in Hand and Lancaster County joined the search effort along with hundreds of members of the Amish community. Search teams, assisted by dogs and horses, combed the area where Linda was believed to have walked the previous day, as well as the surrounding fields and wooded areas. Search teams made up of Amish and non-Amish volunteers also conducted independent searches in an attempt to help find the young woman. A social media page was created to keep the public informed of any developments, and also to allow people to share information about the case. The person who created the page was Mervyn Fisher, one of Linda's uncles, who asked for her parents' permission and explained that social media could help with the search because it reaches many people. Mervyn acted as an intermediary regarding social media and public awareness of the case through the use of technology, since the Amish do not use any of those things. Mervyn grew up in the Amish community, but sometime after reaching adulthood, he no longer wanted to follow the Amish way of life and began living like most other people. Guys, just to give you some quick context, according to sources, there are approximately 400,000 Amish people throughout North America. And contrary to what many people believe, their way of life is extremely attractive to those who are born into it, as the retention rate among young people is remarkably high, ranging from 85% to 90%. This means that only a minority, mostly young adults between the ages of 18 and 25, choose not to be baptized and decide to leave the community. And even among those few who leave to experience the modern world, many eventually regret it and return to the traditional way of life. But that was not the case for Mervyn. Well, after 2 days of unsuccessful searches with no sign of Linda, the FBI joined the case. The first investigative theory that detectives pursued was that she had run away from home. As I mentioned earlier, some young people who are born into Amish communities decide to leave and live in the outside world after reaching adulthood. In some cases, their departure from these communities is peaceful, but in other cases, when the family is more strict, conflicts can arise. So some young people who know how strict their families are choose to run away in order to avoid confrontation and attempts to stop them. The FBI considered this possibility, which is why their first theory was that Linda had run away from home. They theorized that perhaps she had run away alone or even with a boyfriend. Her family and other people close to her, of course, strongly disagreed with that theory. According to them, Linda loved living as an Amish woman and was deeply passionate about all the work she performed within the community. She had never had a boyfriend or been involved with anyone romantically. They said that at no point in her life had she ever expressed any desire to leave the Amish community and live like most other people. In addition, Linda had planned trips and activities for the following weeks. So the idea that she had simply run away made no sense. Honestly, everyone, it would have been better if Linda had actually run away, because then she would probably have been safe somewhere. But that's not what happened. What happened to her was much worse. Well, detectives began looking into other investigative leads, but they did not completely rule out the possibility that Linda had run away. Detectives stated that if Linda had not run away, she could be in serious danger and at significant risk of harm or injury. Because of this, she was classified as an endangered missing person and a possible victim of a crime. The first person detectives spoke with was Lillian Ebersole. Lillian was the last person to speak with Linda before her disappearance. The two spoke outside the barn on the farm where the church service had been held. Lillian said that Linda seemed completely normal and that there was nothing unusual about her. After talking for some time, they said goodbye, and Linda left. One detail that Lillian remembered and shared with detectives was that Linda had taken off her shoes and was walking home barefoot while carrying them in her hand. 3 of Linda's friends from her youth group were also interviewed by police. They said they had seen Linda in the days leading up to her disappearance, and that she had been in good spirits. When she failed to show up for the youth group meeting, they assumed she was not feeling well. Since the Amish do not use cell phones, there was no way for the girls to call Linda to find out what had happened, so they simply assumed she was sick or something similar. They reiterated that Linda was happy and loved her family very much. She would never have simply left without telling anyone where she was going. Detectives retraced Linda's route from the church to her home. They spoke with people who lived along that road, asking whether they had seen the young woman that day. A man named Isaac Esch, who lived across from that road, was sitting on the porch of his house between 12:30 p.m. and 12:45 p.m. The man reported seeing a red sedan traveling eastbound along the road in the opposite direction from the church Linda had attended. The vehicle then turned onto a nearby road, stopped for about 1 minute, and headed back west toward the church area. When detectives asked him to describe the driver, Isaac said he was a dark-skinned man with black curly hair, probably Hispanic. At the time the vehicle passed in front of Isaac's house, Linda was still walking home along the same road. Detectives concluded that the vehicle's presence in the area and Linda's disappearance might be connected. They then began searching for security camera footage from homes located along the road and in the surrounding area. Thanks to the cooperation of local residents, detectives obtained a significant amount of footage from various cameras installed at different homes. The quality of most of the recordings was poor, but the FBI was able to enhance the footage using specialized software, which helped them capture important details. The footage showed the red sedan, identified as a Kia Rio, traveling south at 12:36 p.m. The vehicle then disappeared from the camera's field of view, likely entering a farm access road where there were no cameras. At 12:41 p.m., a young woman wearing light-colored clothing appears walking south on the east side of the road. Police identified the young woman as Linda. She was wearing a white apron, which is part of traditional Amish clothing, and helped investigators identify her. Shortly afterward, a man appears in the footage coming from the direction where the car had been parked. He crosses the road toward Linda. The two then begin walking together in the direction of where the car was parked. All of this happens within 34 seconds. A short time later, the red Kia Rio reappears in the footage, leaving the area where it had been parked and traveling in the direction of the church Linda had attended. After that, the vehicle was not captured by any other cameras in the area. Most likely it left the region as soon as Linda got into the car. For detectives, there was no doubt. The man seen in the footage approaching the young woman was involved in her disappearance. Now they needed to track down the vehicle and determine who owned it as quickly as possible, because every second was extremely valuable. The red Kia Rio had several characteristics that would help authorities distinguish it from similar models. It had a rear spoiler, several stickers including one with the letters LCM on the trunk, and dents on the sides as well as other areas of the vehicle. Detectives believed those details would help them track it down. FBI agents created a composite image showing how Linda might appear wearing casual clothes with her hair down, since when she disappeared she was dressed in traditional Amish attire, a beige dress, a white apron, and a black head covering. Police continued searching for the young woman throughout the county and surrounding areas. They also continued interviewing people in order to gather as much information as possible. During these interviews, officers discovered that several people had seen the same car, the red Kia Rio, driving around the area in the days before Linda disappeared. Police received 3 separate reports from Amish witnesses. All of the reports came from women who said they had been followed by the same car. A group of 4 Amish women saw the vehicle pass them 3 different times. 2 other women saw the car pass them more than once on another road and became frightened. They ended up taking shortcuts to get away. An Amish girl who was walking alone saw the car slowly pass by her 4 times. The man inside the vehicle stared at her intensely. Terrified, the girl ran into a barn and hid. According to her, she could see from inside the barn that the vehicle had stopped nearby as if it were waiting for her to reappear. The description of the driver provided by these women matched the description Isaac had given police. A dark-skinned man with black curly hair, probably Hispanic. Based on this, police became certain that the driver seen by the women was the same man captured on security footage approaching Linda and leading her to the car. He had been driving around the area for more than a day hunting for victims, simply waiting for an opportunity to act. Linda, although she was 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighed only 126 pounds, so it would be fair to say that she was a physically fragile young woman when compared to an adult man. So when the driver of the red sedan saw her walking alone, he took advantage of the opportunity and kidnapped her. Certainly, if it had not been Linda, it would have been another woman from the community, because that was clearly the man's objective. Police also received a statement from an Amish couple named Isaac and Sarah Stoltzfoos, who said that at around 1:30 p.m. on the day of the disappearance, they saw the red sedan with an Amish girl sitting in the passenger seat, wearing a white apron and a black head covering. Now, guys, you might assume they were family because they shared Linda's last name, but they were not related. The surname Stoltzfoos is one of the most common surnames in the Amish community of Lancaster County, so there are many people with that last name who are not related. In fact, this couple lived in a different Amish district within the county, and after reporting what they had seen, police concluded that the Amish girl in the vehicle was Linda. In addition, another Amish man named Gideon King III, who was traveling by horse-drawn buggy on a nearby road, also saw the vehicle with an Amish girl sitting in the passenger seat. With this information, it became even clearer that the driver of the Kia Rio had indeed kidnapped the young woman. The investigation continued, and now the authorities' main objective was to identify the owner of the vehicle used in the abduction and track him down. One factor that complicated the investigation was the fact that the Amish do not use technology. As a result, certain forms of evidence, such as cell phone location data or call records, simply did not exist. In addition, when Linda disappeared, her parents did not realize she was missing until many hours later, during the early hours of the following morning. And we all know that in cases like this, every second is valuable. The young people from the group Linda was supposed to meet that afternoon assumed she had become ill and therefore had not attended the meeting. Since they did not have cell phones, they could not call her to check whether she was okay. All of this made the police investigation much more difficult and gave the criminal a significant amount of time to act, since the response time between Linda's disappearance and the beginning of the search was very slow. By that point, many hours had already passed, hours during which Linda remained in the hands of her captor. I'm not trying to say that the Amish should use technology. I respect their choice not to do so, and I actually think their faith and ability to maintain that lifestyle are admirable, something I honestly could never do. But the fact is that they are at a major disadvantage when dealing with people who are not Amish and enter their communities with bad intentions, as was the case with this man. Think about it. The Amish do not use cars, but the criminal did. Today, depending on your speed, a car allows you to leave an area very quickly before anyone even notices. You can pass through several towns in a short amount of time, and that is exactly what happened, since other Amish residents from a different district saw the same vehicle in their area shortly after Linda disappeared. So personally, I don't think it is appropriate for ordinary people to be freely driving around areas where the Amish live. Unfortunately, there are many bad people in this world, so in my opinion, the ideal situation would be for Amish communities to exist in something similar to a gated community for their own safety, where only authorized individuals as well as police officers and paramedics when necessary would be allowed access. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think. Well, county police and the FBI worked very hard to locate the vehicle and its owner. However, due to the lack of additional witness reports and security camera footage, days passed without any major breakthroughs in the investigation. In early July of that same year, about 10 days after Linda's abduction, detectives were finally able to determine who owned the red Kia Rio through the Department of Motor Vehicles. The vehicle belonged to Justo Roberto Smoker, who was 34 years old at the time and of Hispanic origin from Costa Rica. Justo had recently been released from prison and lived in Paradise Township, approximately 4 miles from the location where Linda was abducted. On July 8th, police discovered where Justo worked, a company called Dutchland Incorporated, which operates in the water treatment industry and is located about 10 miles from the Amish community. FBI agents went to the location and spotted the red Kia Rio in the parking lot. The vehicle had all the same markings as the one captured by security cameras near the road where Linda was abducted. For those who may not remember, the vehicle seen in the footage had a rear spoiler, several stickers including one with the letters LCM on the trunk, and dents on the sides and other areas. All of those details matched the red Kia Rio parked outside the company. Agents waited outside the company for Justo to finish work, and when he left, they followed him to his apartment. They did not approach him immediately. Instead, they waited until the following day. The next day, agents went to Justo's apartment and brought him in for questioning. During the interview, agents asked him what he knew about Linda Stoltzfoos' disappearance. The agents did not tell him about all the evidence they had already collected. They wanted to see how far he would go with his claims. Justo told agents that he had no idea who Linda was or where she might be. He said that he had never been in the area where the young woman disappeared on June 21st, and that he had not had any passengers in his vehicle in recent days. He claimed that he had been the only occupant of the vehicle during that period. However, all of the evidence collected by authorities during the investigation indicated otherwise. In addition, numerous witness statements placed Justo in the area where Linda disappeared, both on the day she vanished and the day before. 6 women and 1 girl, all Amish, stated that they had been followed by the red Kia Rio, and the description they provided of the driver matched Justo's physical appearance. Agents knew this was not a coincidence. They knew that Justo had been driving that vehicle around the area looking for a victim. Even after hours of questioning and after agents showed Justo evidence proving that he had been in the same area on the same day Linda disappeared, he continued denying any involvement in the case. Agents realized he was not going to cooperate, so they decided to keep him in custody while conducting a search of his apartment and vehicle. Justo's vehicle, which had already been seized on the day he was brought in for questioning, was thoroughly examined. Police noticed that the car had recently been cleaned very carefully. The floor mats from both front seats were missing and could not be found anywhere. An open bottle of bleach was discovered in the trunk. At Justo's apartment, however, police found nothing that could prove his guilt or help determine Linda's whereabouts. Another search was conducted in his work locker, but nothing useful was found there either. Later, after reviewing records of purchases Justo had made in the days leading up to the crime, agents discovered that he had bought several suspicious items. On June 20th, 2020, the day before the crime, Justo went to a Walmart in Lancaster and purchased some clothing and a pair of gray sneakers with white soles. Afterward, he bought alcoholic beverages from stores in the area. The following day, June 21st, the day of the crime, Justo returned to the same Walmart in the morning and purchased 2 packages containing 8 pairs of disposable nitrile gloves. He also purchased 3 pairs of black shoelaces and 2 pairs of black bootlaces. These bootlaces are longer and stronger than regular shoelaces, and investigators believe he used them to restrain Linda. That same day, Walmart security cameras recorded him wearing the gray sneakers with white soles that he had purchased the previous day. However, none of those items were found in his vehicle, apartment, or work locker. It was as if he had purchased them for a single purpose and then disposed of them in order to eliminate evidence. Furthermore, during the search of Justo's apartment, police did not find any footwear that appeared to need replacement laces. Authorities concluded that Justo had conducted reconnaissance in the Amish community on June 20th, where he noticed that some Amish women walked alone and would be easy targets. He then returned home, and the following morning, June 21st, went to Walmart to buy the items he intended to use in his plan to abduct an Amish woman. Despite all of this evidence, Justo continued denying any involvement in the abduction. On July 10, 2020, the FBI offered a reward of $10,000 for information leading to Linda's whereabouts. Shortly afterward, police discovered some of Linda's clothing buried in a wooded area in Ronks, approximately 3 miles from the location where she had been abducted. Among the items were a white bra and a pair of brown socks. Cell phone records showed that Justo had been in the area where the clothing was buried multiple times in the days following Linda's disappearance. Linda's family was shown the clothing and identified the items as belonging to her. The clothing was sent to a crime laboratory for analysis. Not long afterward, authorities announced that Justo's DNA had been found on one of the buried socks.
Further evidence reveals that after the kidnapping, Smoker placed Linda in his vehicle and traveled to remote areas in the eastern side of Lancaster County, including to densely wooded areas in the Welsh Mountains. Analysis of cell phone data indicates that Smoker then traveled to the area of 3104 Harvest Drive, where Linda's bra and stockings were later found buried in a wooded area. Cell phone evidence again indicates that Smoker returned to the area of that site on several occasions in the next subsequent days. Significantly, testing revealed that a DNA profile attributable to Smoker was found on one of Linda's buried stockings.
This was concrete proof that he was indeed responsible, and by this point everyone was already expecting the worst regarding Linda. Even so, Justo continued denying any involvement in the young woman's disappearance. However, because of the overwhelming evidence against him, authorities decided to keep him in custody without bail. In December 2020, after investigators gathered additional evidence against him, he was formally charged with homicide, and the district attorney Heather Adams announced the official upgrade of the charges.
Today, based on this collaborative investigation, Justo Smoker has now been charged with 1 count of criminal homicide for the disappearance and death of Linda Stoltzfoos. Smoker is presumed innocent at this time, and our office will provide fair and due process as we move forward with this prosecution.
The search for Linda Stoltzfoos continued, but there was no longer any hope of finding her alive. In April 2021, approximately 10 months after Linda's disappearance, Justo decided to confess to the crime and reveal the location of the young woman's body as part of an agreement with prosecutors. The agreement was that Justo would confess to the crime and disclose where he had buried the body, and in exchange, prosecutors would not seek the death penalty. Justo confessed that he approached and kidnapped Linda on June 21, 2020. He said that he took the young woman to an isolated area a few miles from the abduction site and subjected her to non-consensual acts there. He then killed her by strangling her with one of the laces he had purchased, and to make sure she was truly dead, he stabbed her several times. Afterward, he drove to the wooded area in Ronks, the same place where some of the victim's clothing had been found. There, he removed some of Linda's clothing, including the white bra and brown socks that were later recovered. The clothing was buried separately from the body. In the following days, between June 22nd and June 27th, Justo returned to the site at least 7 times. When he realized that the place he had originally chosen to bury Linda's body was relatively close to her home, he decided to move it because he feared it would be discovered more easily. So, about 2 days later, Justo relocated Linda's body to a more distant location connected to his daily routine. He buried her body wrapped in a tarp behind the water treatment company where he worked, near railroad tracks. Authorities went to the location using a map drawn by the defendant. There they found Linda's body wrapped in a tarp. She was still wearing her church clothes, including her bonnet. Shoelaces and plastic zip ties had been used to bind her ankles and wrists behind her back. A thin cord connected the bindings on her ankles and wrists and was wrapped around her neck. Her sash and apron had been tightly wrapped around her head, and duct tape covered her mouth. The medical examiner concluded that the cause of death was asphyxiation, and the stab wound was a contributing factor. Blood found in her esophagus indicated that she was alive when she was struck with a sharp object. The autopsy indicated that she had been subjected to non-consensual acts. Justo, however, despite confessing to the crime, denied any wrongdoing of that nature. Because the body had remained at that location for about 10 months, identification was only possible through dental records. The 10-month nightmare of uncertainty was finally over, replaced by a devastating reality. Speaking to the press right after the authorities confirmed they had found Linda, her uncle, Mervyn Fisher, captured the heavy emotion gripping the family.
Well, first of all, I would say a sigh of relief. You know, there's part of us that it's almost like a bittersweet. The part of there is definitely a relief that she's been found, and now there can be healing, there can be closure.
And with the body recovered, prosecutors could finally move forward to ensure justice. On July 23, 2021, Justo Roberto Smoker pleaded guilty to the kidnapping and murder of Linda Stoltzfoos and was sentenced to decades in prison. When combined with the additional time he faced for violating parole, he could spend up to 88 years behind bars. Prosecutors said they had structured the agreement to ensure that Justo would likely never be released. Linda's family chose not to attend the court proceedings, but they told prosecutors that in time they intended to forgive him for what he had done. Sometime later, Justo asked Linda's family for forgiveness. Linda was buried in an Amish cemetery in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It was a typical Amish funeral, simple, discreet, and private, in accordance with their traditions. According to reports, family members and the Amish community attended in large numbers. The case received major attention throughout Pennsylvania and later across the United States. Crimes of this nature are extremely uncommon in Amish communities, which are generally considered very safe. The case created significant fear among some Amish regarding outsiders, and the fear among young women who often walk alone became much greater because they are more vulnerable than men. Today, the case of Linda Stoltzfoos continues to be remembered as one of the most shocking crimes in the recent history of Pennsylvania's Amish community. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.